Hey, just wanted to say, quick disclaimer, we are not theologians, pastors, religious teachers, or in any way an authority of the Bible. Just average Christians having a great time talking about the Bible with our friends. Potluck was created to encourage food for thought and to help open up a conversation about major and minor topics from the Bible. We strongly encourage all audience members to conduct their own research as statements presented are largely opinion-based as well as biblically backed. Us here at Potluck wish you a great day, and please, come enjoy the potluck.
Welcome to Potluck, the podcast where we bring our different dishes of conversation and perspective to the table. This podcast focuses on a casual conversation about God through personal stories and experiences. We hope that these conversations help in understanding the Bible, God, and each other. We're glad that you've decided to join our conversation. So hello and welcome back to Potluck the podcast. I'm Danila.
I'm Delano.
I'm Darcy. I'm Briley.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Kirby, and that was definitely the first time we did that.
I'm so glad someone mentioned that. That was so different for us to do at the beginning of the podcast. But yeah, so we're trying to figure out what to talk about today for this podcast. And we had looked back at our Instagram, and one of the topics that people have mentioned was struggles of Christianity. So what about it, guys?
I feel like we could start back from the conversation we just had before coming on, and I don't know if I should reiterate my thing instead of let Briley start with what she was about to say, since no one heard that.
You can reiterate because it.
Okay. Basically, what I was saying was that I was told by two people that I was one of the cool Christians, and I was like, that's kind of cringe, and just kind of sad. Because the idea of how we should be to one another and how we should be to other people should just be warm and inviting and just like, just normal people. Like, I'm not just that much different from anyone else. It shouldn't be that way. But I think a lot of Christians that even I know sometimes would, because they're Christian, kind of put themselves on a pedestal in public and try to like show up how much better they are morally than others. And it's like, it's embarrassing to a degree that I have to destigmatize other people as a Christian, that I can just be a normal person and just treat them as regular people.
Dang,
and then have to be like, oh, also, like, it's weird.
That's wow. Sorry, that line was like powerful to me. Like, it's crazy. Like the way you said that too. It's crazy to me that I have to destigmatize other people's versions of like. Oh, dang, that was fire. Good job.
Yeah, I guess that led me to talk about the other day. I was getting some coffee after my last class, and someone asked me, they're like, oh, like, how's your day? Like the barista or whatever asked me, he's like, how's your day been going? What you been up to or stuff? Just making friendly conversation. I was like, oh, I just got on my classes, I'm gonna just chill for the day and stuff. And he's like, oh, where do you go? And I told him where I go, the local Adventist school or whatever. And he's like, oh, like, okay, like, that's cool, whatever. But then when he turned around to talk to the other baristas, the windows was still open. And they were talking about the Adventists in the area and like the school and stuff. And some of them were saying like, yeah, they've got like all these strict rules over there. Like they have this curfew that they're not allowed to like leave campus after a certain time. And they're they were just kind of like saying how like different and like weird and like putting it into like kind of like a negative like light. I don't think they realized that I could hear their conversation though.
By the way, here you dog.
Yeah. Turns around and hands me my drinks, and I was like, have a good day. I'm so sorry.
A lot of people say that. A lot of people that attend that college say the same exact thing though. So
it's just true.
Yeah.
Like we have one named Daniel Gonzalez right here who literally left me because of that. But yeah.
Wait, so I'm trying to understand. So Briley, your issue with it was that they saw like the root of it was that they were like pointing out Christianity and like differences, or
well, they were noticing like the negativities and the strictness that come along with it. Like oh, those Adventists, they're like XYZ, like that's so weird, that's so crazy that they're telling like grown adults that what they can and can't do. Like they're making all these strict rules, like they're pointing out like the negativities, and only really it seems like they were only seeing one side of it.
Honestly, okay, so I 100% agree with that. One thing that frustrates me about being a Christian is that anything that I choose to do in my life is now like looked as like, ooh, why are you doing that? Is that because God told you to do it or something like that? Like people choose to go to that school. Some people are forced to go to that school, but that's the case for everything. Like some people are forced to go to school that they don't want to. But the minute like Christian is a part of the sentence, it's like, ooh, that's so weird. But if a guy is like coming with a regimented lifestyle where he's exercising and doing all those things, or like girl or a guy, not but,
Just give him some code of conduct.
If someone is doing that, it's looked as like, oh wow, that's a healthy lifestyle, which is exactly what Southern's trying to promote, being able to go to sleep at a certain time or whatever. But it's just like the minute like Christianity is involved, it's automatically cringy or weird or strict and restraining, versus a bunch of other like private schools that are not related to Christianity that are also strict, also demanding, but it's like, oh, that's an education forward school.
Yeah.
Like, I even saw that in like private schools in my area, like growing up in Florida, that's not religious, like the ones that had like uniforms and stuff, but just because it wasn't religious, it was seen as really great and really cool and really academic. But the minute it's like Christian, it's like none of those things.
Yeah. And I think like, I feel like for sure we are to blame in a sense for that. Cause like, just to keep listing examples, like being vegan, that's super, super trendy now, or vegetarian at least. And like, that was a big thing in Adventism. Obviously not every Adventist adheres to that, and that's okay because it's not a rule, but now it's really trendy because people are actually realizing, oh, there's like actual health benefits to this, and like no drinking and stuff. Like there's a lot of non-Christian people who choose not to drink because it's not healthy for them, or smoking or whatever. So it's like good things that we teach and that the Bible teaches. I feel like the Bible, it is a moral handbook. It is like, it talks on a lot of things, but in a sense, it's really how to be a good person, how to live a healthy life, not only physically, but mentally. But I feel like the reason that people don't look at it as that is because Christians just tend to like force it down people's throats, as we all know. And so it becomes something that people want to stay away from, and then they will go search for answers on their own. And a lot of times they'll come back to kind of the things that the Bible teaches, at least health-wise and stuff, but they just don't want to get from the Bible because we kind of abused that.
Yeah. A lot of people like, oh wait, what was I about to say? Oh, I remembered. A lot of people don't like I feel like a lot of people can get really offended when they hear like, oh, issues like with being a Christian, or like it can be so hard to be a Christian. It's like, I feel like that like it also gets pushed in people's face sometimes. It's like, oh, the poor Christian, the poor, like, Christianity's not been great for a lot of history, like during the Middle Ages and stuff, and has traumatized a lot of people, and that's very valid. But I also think that people forget that Christians are like also human and have like human hurts, like all of the issues of being human apply to humans, all humans. Christians have all the issues that apply to humans all over the world. Like, I think I made my point, and now I'm getting dizzy.
I think I can help you out with that. Just the understanding that I was talking to someone else. So like the other person who was telling me like, oh, you're different, you're cool. She was talking about she was having her own issues with God. Even threw in a random, like at some point randomly said, if he is real, like I'm gonna need his help, blah blah. I'm like, okay, interesting way to drop that to me, but cool, whatever. And I was just there helping them out, like move their stuff, right? And like it was at some point I was just trying to sit back and realize, hey man, I know a lot of times, especially when it comes to Christianity, for people who like truly like have a go like, oh, I think I do like believe this, I do understand this, I do see the benefit. It's the people that keep you away. Like it's almost every time I've seen someone straight like not want to be involved or not even want to talk. It's the people who are like essentially. I was even thinking about it earlier. A lot of Christianity, especially like evangelical Christians,
Mhm.
who like are really loud and put signs on the streets. Just it's just the rehash of Pharisees, to be honest. It's just rehashing the same thing. Like when the whole history repeats itself, this is the repeating. Evangelical Christians, those who like put their political ideologies with their Christianity and like try to like shove everything that they believe in to align with the whole country that they live in. It's like that's what pushes people away, and it's just weird. It's just very weird. It's very complicated.
People have thought processes that sometimes it's like a moral compass that kind of conflicts. Because ultimately, like when evangelical Christians will apply Christianity to their political world, their basically everything. The reason why, because they see that is their guiding moral compass. And the problem is that for a lot of those things, it inhibits freedoms, which kind of go against a lot of political and a lot of ideologies, especially here in the United States. Because like interactions with Christians in Europe, in my experience, and I do not have a lot of experiences, so take this with a grain of salt, is that it is ultimately like it's just a regimen. It's just like being a Christian or having some form of religion is kind of just a sprinkle on to your life. It's not like a choice or ideology that like encompasses your entire political, geographic, and basically your entire community. Honestly, I would argue soccer in Europe is more of an encompassing force than religion. But here in the United States, oh boy, do we have the evangelicals that want to bring that to everything. And most of our roots as Americans tend from that philosophy. We have a lot of our history going like, we don't like what our government's doing and what they're doing with religion. We're gonna start our own over here. So like there's a lot of history of like Americans wanting to bring religion to everything. And to go back to like what, because Christianity is a name, right? Christianity is a name and it's become a reputation, a title, a message, all the above. And when you put yourself as a Christian, you're also taking in all the other people, so and so Christians, their reputations, abilities, their namesakes, everything. And specifically for us as Adventists, we get even specific. We get even more specific. We're like, oh yeah, those crazy Adventists and their great disappointment and they're not eating meats and all that, and they encompass because that's what they hear. They encompass that and put
or
that.
You just get the one guy asking, "Hey, what about that Waco dude?" And you're like,
yeah,
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about
He's our Bruno.
Oh, no.
So like you have these things that incorporate a name and putting yourself as a Christian, Adventist, whatever, you're gonna have that incumbency reputation fall on you because you identify as that. So it's also ultimately the same thing as the title.
Mm-hmm. One thing, just like going off of what you're saying, like I feel like one of the biggest issues within Christianity, and I don't know if other religions face this as well because I'm not a part of them, but is fear. Like I feel like fear drives a lot of like decisions in not even like Adventists, but just Christianity as a whole. I feel like when we start fearing about, oh my gosh, if we don't do this correctly, we will go to hell, or having this like aspect of just being scared about what will happen to us, or what will happen to our kids, or what will happen to our families. And that's the conversation I always hear when I'm like kind of not loving what I'm hearing from Christians. It's like controlling other situations because they're scared for like their families, or like how this world is going into a spiral and how we need to protect them. But I feel like through the protection and with the root of fear, I feel like it's created a downfall in our church where it's now people look at us as crazy and irrational because now we want to control everyone, which is currently crazy and irrational because of our eternal fears about how we feel about God and how our culture can be disrupted and stuff like that. I feel oh sorry.
No.
Just to end it is like I feel like if we ourselves were more confident in our relationship with God and not just having all this pressure from the church or from our families or from our internal pressure of like not feeling good enough, I feel like a lot of the issues that we have in our church would just not be there.
I think you nailed that. Like that was super insightful that you said that. That is, fear is the reason for the state of Christianity today. Like we're supposed to live out of love, not fear. And we've been living as a group, we've been living out of fear for a really, really long time. Like in so many aspects, like just speaking as an Adventist, like even though we don't believe in an eternal hell, like we still kind of hold heaven over people's heads. Like, are you going to make it to heaven or not? That's living out of fear. We're scared of the end of times. Like that's talked about a lot, especially in the Adventist church. And that's something that's like, oh, you better be prepared. You better be spending time with God every day, or else you're going to be like not ready. And then you're spending time with God out of fear and you're not like seeking love. So yeah, I think we all need a huge mindset and relearn how to be Christians.
Yeah,
For sure.
for sure.
Should we have we explained before what Adventists believe about hell?
It seems like a lot to cover right now.
Like, I don't think we have. I don't want to get into
But
it.
basically, it's not an eternal place you burn forever. It just means like a separation from God. So
very basically.
very
Annihilism. Is that annihilationism? Annihilism? One of those two.
I heard that word this Sunday.
Right? You just get
Also, you don't go when you die. You just sit there until God comes. Anyways, moving on.
Yeah, we need.
Yeah, that's a whole.
Moving on.
That's a whole other podcast.
The
whole other information. But I was thinking about something when you said that, Danila, about the whole fear aspect, and I feel like it might. This is gonna skew a little bit, but like I'm gonna try to get there.
That's this whole podcast, bro.
Yeah.
Understandable. So I don't know if anyone knows about the Last of Us show that just dropped, like just recently. I know Daniel and Delana might probably know about it, but like
Heard of it.
So yeah. It's a video game adaptation. No one's sure if they really want to get into it. But anyways, there was a thing where the director of the show was explaining how one of the characters was the idea that like having unconditional love, at least for humans, like let me like I'm gonna just back this up because before I start getting into the like God's different from us, let's be honest, right? But a human's unconditional love isn't fully positive because the idea of the fear of you love someone enough that you're going to want to do everything in your power to go ahead and either save them or do the best you think, that whatever you think is the best for them, no matter what other problems you're going to cause around you, right? Like the example is that even through like people can love or have such an unconditional love that they now fall into the idea of xenophobia or something else, because the idea of like, I'm afraid of something so different coming into my life or coming into the people I love's life. I don't know how this is going to treat us or how this is going to do anything for us. Thus, they now act incorrectly towards that foreign thing, towards that crazy thing. I also think that's what happened with Christianity when it came to other religions, when it came to other like things coming into either America or either us interacting with things that are different and actively just being fearful and trying our best to like, well, we need to save these people. So we need to like do that. We should like change them and do all these things, not realizing like, yo, this might be a cultural thing. You probably should like learn about them instead of just being, you're like even the idea of like Christians like looking at other people as savages, they didn't have God or whatever. Like there's a lot of things within that especially like as a Christian gets thrown into my face whenever I talk about, oh yeah, like I'm Christian. And then people start like, well, did you know that they did this? I'm like, no, I'm aware. I remember having conversations where like all these things happen because we're like, yeah, no, I'm aware of it. That's not today. And I don't act like that today. Obviously I have my own way of thinking and things like that. But I also feel like the idea of being Christian people who have like beef with Christianity or see the flaws of Christianity are always going to like attack you specifically about why would you do this? Do you know how wrong this is? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like in my head, especially like the places I go, the places I just interact with random people, there's always like a thing where I look at them like, you understand, I can say the same thing about half the things you interact with, but you still do it, right? Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, it seems to be like really comfortable to criticize Christianity and criticize Christians, especially in America, where it's the dominating religion. Thus, to a degree, it kind of casts itself over the others, and in some place, especially when it comes to politics, would go ahead and put other people's belief systems and religions down by trying to impose the Christian ideals. And I see where it comes from. It's just like, what would be the best way to combat that outside of just saying, I'm different, or it's not really like that? Like, what would you think is the best way to combat, like, knowing why people are coming at you and how to flip it, or how to just like try to have an understanding, like not to convert, but just to simply be like, hey man, I'm just living my life like you. You know,
man, you gotta turn the other cheek. You gotta just,
Yeah.
you just gotta, like, it is ultimately what's gonna come with that name. Is like, if you identify as a Christian, there's gonna be some drawbacks, there's gonna be some positives, some negatives. For us, mostly nepotism, but you know, we'll worry about that later. But like, other than that, I mean, there's gonna be groups of people who's not gonna like you just because you have the name Christian attached to it. Yep. And there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you can kind of just sit there and take it.
But also, like, I feel like it's important to acknowledge what they're saying, because they do have some sort of actual, okay, so Christians have been associated with mass murder. Like, I feel like that's something that should be acknowledged. Like, if any like religion was associated with mass murder, I feel like it would be only natural to acknowledge it. So I feel like it's important to acknowledge that. Don't be like, well, like, super, for me personally, I wouldn't be like super like just, well, you don't get it, or like defensive about it. I think that's it. I think the biggest thing is not to be defensive, because the thing is, there's a lot of issues within Christianity. There's a lot of like the religion itself, not necessarily like the actual spiritual like side of things, but the Christianity, the religion, has a lot of issues in it, a lot of politics, and we've like touched on a lot of that. And I feel like when people are criticizing our church, a lot of the times they have a point. And I feel like instead of being defensive about it, which is what a lot of Christians end up doing, and just being like, you're going to go to hell for saying what you just said to me and all this stuff, we just need to be receptive and be like, you're right. How can I do better?
Okay. You made a couple points that I wanted to touch on, Kirby. You mentioned something about like unconditional love, like that aspect and stuff. And I personally, I don't think humans can have an unconditional love. I think sin kind of corrupts the like purest form of love, and that translates into like corrupting of Christians and people of Christianity and stuff. Because God is like, he is love, like he's the purest form of love. Mm-hmm. And we as Christians tend to do things in the name of love and in the name of God. And I think that's the biggest reason that people have issues with Christians, is because we're professing hate, we're professing all these negative things into the world under the guise of love and safety and savior mentality in a way.
Okay. I think the way you're saying it is like, I would say I fully agree with you. I think it's like the way we as people perceive what unconditional love is. Because let's be honest, right? Like, if someone is saying conditional love and we think about it, we really think about what the real unconditional love is, that's God. That is completely different than what we can fathom. If you think about like a human's fathoming of unconditional love, right? That's where I was like looking at like, oh, that's probably like truly an actual toxic thing, like you said, where you start breeding all these different like problematic ideals and like hating on multiple different types of people because this is for love. I'm doing this for love because I love. Like, it's like, nah. There's probably like a deep-seated agenda or some sort of favorable thing within your within your psyche that you're not willing to accept or understand right now. but you're just going to use the word love. Like, I think that's we're on the same page on that aspect, but
Yeah.
also the clarification of like, that's not what real love is. I think that's also
Mhm.
beneficial to point out. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I remember what I was going to say. So I think a lot of the issues with a lot of issues that I see with Christianity is things become a matter of who's the most right or who's the most good. You know, oh, I'm more right than you because I believe this way, or I'm more good than you because I do these things, and you don't. So you're gonna go to hell, or I'm gonna go to heaven, or I'm gonna go to heaven better than you are, stuff like that.
I'm going to go to super
When-
heaven. That's where I'm going.
Heaven
In
2.0.
itself. Taking like an Uber. That's crazy.
To hold everybody to the same thing where it's like we all have to meet this same threshold to be the best we can to get into heaven or to not go to hell. We have to all meet the same threshold, which is completely different in each person's eyes. It's impossible, especially because in Christianity, at least from what I believe, God's a personal God, and he interacts with each individual in their own ways that they need to. And to say that one person's more Christian than the other isn't really valid, because each person's on their own path, interacting with God in their own way, which works for them and is personalized towards them. So to say that there's like one way that it should be done is not accurate at all. And it's not really a Christian thing to do.
Yeah.
To alienate somebody because they're not acting the same exact way that other Adventists are acting, or other Christians in general are acting and going about their Christian walk, is incredibly damaging to the good things that Christianity is bringing to the table, like love, and other health things, and other just general mental health things. There's a lot of things about Christianity that are very beneficial to people,
Could help a lot of people.
and it's all
Self-discipline.
unfortunately skewed by the idea that if you're not doing it in the Baptist way, or the Catholic way, or the Adventist way, or the Pentecostal way, or the, whatever denomination Christianity that you choose, if you're not doing it in this way, you're not right. When all it takes to be right in the Christianity, and from what I can see, is accepting God as your savior and striving for love.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
Jesus and God summed everything up. I always quote back to this, but Jesus summed everything up that you need to do in the Bible to two things: love God and love your neighbor as yourself. But at the center of that is love, and everything falls after that. So those are really the two most important things to live your life by. And does that say anything about alienating people? Does that say anything about trying to be more right than anybody else? Does that try to say anything about even being more good than anybody else? No. So truly, if you think about it, it's personalized for a reason.
Right. I agree with you. There's a lot of competition within our church, and not like as like Christianity as a whole again. But I do feel like the conversations, I think there is ways to have healthy conversations like the ones we have now are having now on this podcast, where we're growing our relationship. Because I think a lot of the reason why we have the different denominations, the reason why we have the different ways of believing, is because of like Christian growth. Like we start off with just like the two, like these are the two main reasons, like, and that's the one that we have to always fall back on, like whenever like we're not sometimes we're not ready to grow our relationship with God. Sometimes we just need to like make it through. And just because we're just so busy. But like in times where I'm trying to like I feel like God helps me become a better person. And when I'm working on trying to be a better person, a lot of those types of questions come up for me. And it is helpful that so many people have already argued it to death that I can just Google it and YouTube it and find out all the answers. But it does look bad to other people, because it looks like, oh, these Christian people who are always talking about love, just like Riley and Kirby was talking about, is now not professing love. They're professing argument. But it's like, I mean, I think another big thing is that we're not perfect. And a lot of people in our church think that they might be.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's the thing that we are human, and like that's important for everybody to understand, both Christian and non-Christian alike. But I think Christians have the hardest time understanding that concept, because we like to think that we get to a point where we know all truth, or at least we know all truth in many areas, and then that's the hill we die on. That's the hill we want to die on. I think Christians have a persecution mindset, and like I get it on the one hand, because the Bible does warn us about, things that are going to happen in the future. But on the other hand, like, look at where we are now. We're the dominant religion in America, at least. We're a dominant religion in the world. Like, we are in a position of power, and we have been for many, many years, and we still have this persecution mindset. And I think that's what makes people so defensive of Christianity, because they always feel like they have to fight for it. And that's circling back around to like, that's the fear mindset speaking, instead of putting loving people first.
Dang, sorry, that line that you just said, we still have a persecution mindset. Damn. Like, we might not be actually going around killing people, but I feel like Christians tend to kill people's spirit and soul based off of moral high grounds and thought processes. So when you said, I was like, yeah. Yeah. So I Googled what are the top 10 things that Christians struggle with. Number one, constantly being told our beliefs are wrong.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying that. Everybody's saying that to everybody. Your beliefs are wrong. My beliefs are wrong.
I will continue to make fun of astrology people for the rest of my life. If I'm allowed to do that, some person go up to me and like, your guy in the sky isn't real. And I'll be like, okay, strange person. Okay.
All funny.
The opinions of Daniel do not necessarily mirror the opinions of this podcast. Thank you.
They better.
But that's honestly a big thing, especially being Adventist, because we are different from all the other Christians, where they're like, let's worship on Sunday, and we're over here Saturday. Can I have any takers? And the amount of times I have been told that I'm wrong for that I have not studied enough. Like, I don't know why they feel the need to tell me this, but I guess it's that persecution mindset. I love that. I'm going to use that for the rest of my life. We feel the need.
I want to add to that, because like it's the unnecessary attack. Like, if I'm because this happened to me like a month ago and basically the person, I was not allowed to engage. There's a lot of context in here that's going to be avoided, but for the sake of this, just kind of imagine the situation. There was a person who I could not have a conversation with at all about religion. I was barred from it. I could not have that conversation.
Which is anyone who knows Daniel, that's his worst nightmare.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not allowed to do something?
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
I was barred from having a conversation with this person. And I figured out why after the first thing I said was I was Adventist. The first thing they did was attack my religion, not ask questions about it, not, oh, I've heard about that, or start a conversation. No, it was to be immediately attacked for it. So honestly, that says more to me about the person and the type of people that do that than anything else. If you are going to attack someone's religion, something that they care for, they have studied for, something that it's been a part of their life forever, is a big thing in your life, and the first thing you're going to do is attack it, that you're a bad person. As simple as it is.
You're just rude. You're just rude.
Yeah, like that's just rude. Like, you don't do that. And what happens with a lot of us is that we, again, Daniil has mentioned this, we get defensive because like, oh, that's my entire life. That's my community, my family, my friends. You're like, I have to be defensive about it. We have to calm down. We have to be like, okay, you know what? They have their own opinion, but it says more about the person who does the attacking than anything else. So we just have to be like, everybody, this is not just applying to Christians. We just have to be open to conversation, dialogue, and be respectful of each other. But because we're human, and sometimes we have short tempers, sometimes we just want to deck each other in the face. Or stab each other with sword, based on what point of history you are.
Yo, if Peter did it, I can do it.
There you go.
I will say this. I think I've had more backlash from other Christians about me being Adventist than I do from just usually Muslim. Like Muslims I've met in my life are pretty like, oh yeah, man, cool, they got something. Like it's like they're just casual. Like they're like, at least the people, at least in America, they're just happy that there's like someone with a true belief system. And they're just like, oh, cool, that's great to hear. It's cool that you got something you got going on for yourself. Other Christians like, why would you do that? Why did you do this? That? Why do you want that?
Like, you are so right. Like I've experienced that on Instagram too. Like a lot of my followers that are Muslim, like if I like post something about God, they celebrate with me. They're like, oh yes, I love God too. Like, and then it's the Christians that are always nitpicking at each other.
Like, you didn't say this. You didn't say God's right name. You know,
or like this.
I feel like it's different because we are part of Christianity, so I feel like we're harder on each other.
That makes sense.
Another religion would be on them because it's like we're out here calling ourselves Christians, just like they're calling their Christians, and we're actively telling them that they're wrong because they're worshiping on Sunday and I'm worshiping on Saturday. And so it's like I feel like there's a lot more reasons to be defensive in that aspect because it's like you're what I am and you are not doing it correctly.
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
Versus like a Muslim, why would they care what we're doing? You know?
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I've had like a lot of other Christians seem to, especially people who've been related to me that aren't Adventists.
Baptists.
Like, yeah, they were Baptists, but they would constantly be like, oh, you're in a cult, like constantly, like we were children and they would constantly test us to see if like we knew. They'd be like, oh, but like you don't actually have to follow the 10 commandments because you only have to follow the 2 because like they encompass them all and you don't really need the other ones. That's why Saturday isn't the whole spill of why what we believe, what I've been raised in, and my religion and my beliefs are crazy and a cult. And that can make people defensive. I don't think I'm
just a whole bit,
but
yeah,
I think that I think it's important that we as Christians don't get defensive because it escalates situations and nobody learns in a like nitpicky, toxic, argumentative, who's right, who's wrong way. Like if someone's aggressively or coming at you in a way that they're obviously not interested in learning from what you have to say or your beliefs in any sort of way, it's better to show them than it is to talk about it. You can talk about it casually, but if they're so blocked up against it and really are not receptive, for the lack of a better word, then it's just going to create more discourse and more division instead of unity.
Yeah. Actually, I was listening to a sermon from David Astrick, and he was talking about that aspect when we're talking about evangelizing or talking to other people about God. He talks about like the defensiveness that we get and the importance of because he's like, it's really easy for Adventists to be defensive because we feel like we've got the truth, you know? So the minute someone's like, you shouldn't worship on Saturday, and then we're just kind of like, well, God did. Like, and so
DJ Khaled, God did.
So it's really easy for us to kind of like snap back because like we had just mentioned earlier, we feel like we get the most hate, like, or most hate from other denominations versus other religions. But back to that list. So the first one was constantly being told that our beliefs are wrong. The next one is being generalized.
Yes. Yeah, we generalize Christians, and then like again we generalize like Adventists, like, oh, all Adventists are super crazy conservative, blah 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 blah. But like humans do that to every group of person. If you're in a group you're gonna be generalized. It's just
easier to decipher how to interact with someone that way. It's kind of just like a way to make life easier. Like even with the same thing about you being generalized. I was asked this question at work. And even though my job for like I don't really need to discuss where I work, but the thing is, it's like Adventist ran, but like people don't have to be Adventist working there. And someone was going to ask me about going to a market. I took Bradley to this market, the international market we went to, and they were asking me about like they wanted to tell me something about the market. They're like, "What level Adventist are you?"
What level?
Yeah, like they're like, "What level Adventist are
you? Because
like,
we're
what tier have you unlocked?
Like what tier are you at? Because I don't know what I can bring up.
Okay, wait. Just to clarify, our church does not have tiers. It's more he's talking about mainly of like,
how strict Christian are you? Like pretty much how strict are you?
How Christian are you? Yeah.
Yeah. Like how like you can I can throw it out to be like how devoutly Christian are you? Like how what do you really do? And literally I just looked up because I was like this to me it felt like a dumb question. I was like I looked at I was like Caribbean. Like just I was like Caribbean. Oh no.
You just pulled out your culture in general.
I was like
I feel like that says a lot though.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation too. That's the conversation I can really have. But like I looked at her, I was just like, nah. So basically, it's like I could see it all. I just choose what I want to interact with or not. Like I don't need to like be hidden away by it or like, oh, they talked about something. Ooh, like I was like, I can bring it up. And they just wanted to tell me about like, oh, they had like all these international alcohols that if you ever wanted to buy like a drink or something or like a really like exotic like alcohol or something, you can go there. And I was like, oh cool, whatever. I'm like, might buy that for somebody because like I have no issue being around alcohol. It's not like a big deal for me. I'm not gonna look at a beer section and be like, oh shit. It's like, oh, okay. But apparently there's people that are like that and they just see that and they go like, oh, this is how they all act. They all act real terrified towards anything taboo or whatever. So I was like,
it brings it all back to fear. Like, yeah. So then the next one is, oh wait, Darcy, did you have something to say about that one? Because you seemed very excited about the one being general.
Oh no, I was just thinking of lots of situations in my head, but there's none are worth sharing. So we can move on.
That's an Enneagram 4 though.
Oh.
That's an individual and someone who doesn't like to generalize. I feel like I am a vegetarian. And a lot of Adventists happen to be vegan or vegetarian. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of them actually stop. But like a lot of them are vegan or vegetarian for like very strict ways or like very religious ways. When like I'm a vegetarian for like, sure, it's rooted in biblical, but like my take on it is like, well, yeah, it's better for me. Like with my health issues and stuff, I feel like it's better for me to like just cut out meat. It's a much healthier way for me to live. But when people hear sometimes they're like, oh, you're Adventist. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, you're vegetarian. I'm like, yeah. But like,
unfortunately, I do fit in that stereotype.
Yeah. And it's like, but it's not like, I'm not like, I don't eat meat at all. So I'm a strict vegetarian, but like, I call myself a bad vegetarian because I don't eat that many vegetables, you know. But it's not like I won't eat an ice cream if it's offered to me. So it's generalizations.
I'm not a 4th level Adventist. I just am a level 1 Adventist who is vegetarian.
We gotta stop at the levels. Our church does not have levels. That is what cults do.
My XP bar is pretty low, but I feel like I'm real close to leveling up though.
Oh my god. Okay, so the next one is that Christians struggle with their own sins. And there is an actual interesting quote here that says, fear is controlling you, which is so wild. I promise I did not look at this before anything. But it says, fear is controlling you. I'm sorry, but I can't listen to you all struggle like this. Wait. Sorry. Never mind. That sounded a little off.
You're like, wait. It sounds like someone who wasn't Christian then talking about other Christians that they know.
Yeah,
like, wow. Y'all are messed up, huh?
I mean, there's some things to be taken away from that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Can you reread the question, the thing? The
thing that we struggle with is our own sins.
Yeah. I mean,
everyone. That's literally the point of Christianity and religion.
Well, I feel like it's more of like accepting that they happen. Like I think
I
it's
see.
kind of like what we were talking about earlier, which
Yeah.
is
like the perfection.
the perfectionist aspect of it.
Mhm.
So it's just interesting because reading through this is like we've already touched these. The next one was spiritual like falls. So like when we like turn away from God. That's something. Hypocrisy.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pharisee.
Yeah. This person says, hopefully this doesn't turn out bad, but this says we tend to
Read
preach.
ahead. Just read ahead first.
I did a little bit more this time. But this person says, we tend to preach and rebuke, and that makes it so that it seems we are not allowed to sin at all, or that we aren't allowed to fall away from God or forget praying before bed or a meal. This makes us hypocrites when we sin, and we don't like acknowledging it, but it's true.
I feel like Christians are some of the biggest hypocrites.
There is a song for that.
Is it almost fair to just say that everybody is a hypocrite, or at least like, because we all, like, Christians are supposed to look out for each other, right? And just people in general, like, we are there to, just keep each other company. Like, we are friends with people for a lot of reasons, but I feel like one of those reasons, at least for your closest friends, would be to like help each other kind of like become better people, right? And so like we want to help out each other with many issues, and many of those issues may be issues that we're struggling. Maybe hypocrite is too strong of a word. I guess a hypocrite would be like somebody who is trying to help somebody with an issue and pretending that they aren't dealing with that issue.
I feel like the biggest part of that statement is that we tend to preach and rebuke. I think everyone's done I feel like at some point in our lives, everyone says something and does another, just because we're not perfect.
Yeah.
But it's hard for people. I think the problem is when we start to put other people down for doing that same thing, and not just like putting them down like, hey dude, you shouldn't do that, but no, like saying that you're literally low life, terrible person because you're doing this thing, and then that person goes around and does the same exact thing.
Right. It's the aggression. It's the aggression.
It's the aggression. Yeah.
Because it's like I aggressively don't do this, or I'm against this up to the utmost, and then like someone catches you doing that same thing you said you're against. It's like,
and even if you don't do that same thing, like it's not our place to judge. Like the Bible says it over and over again, especially because the Bible also says like God sees every sin equally, which that's kind of a tough statement, but we don't have to dig into that. But like all sin is sin. And so if we're rebuking somebody for a sin that maybe we don't struggle with, that's still wrong because we're still sinful, and it's literally not our place to judge other people. Like, yes, help them out of a loving spirit, but don't like rebuke them, like coming back to that word.
Yeah. Right. I think for me, this comes down to an idea of like a lot of, especially evangelical Christians, think that it's our job to convert people to our denomination, our religion. Oh, I'm called to make everybody Christian. That's what we have to do. I remember growing up hearing that God's not going to come back. Jesus isn't going to come back until everybody's heard the name of Jesus. And until that, God won't come back. So we got to tell everybody we can about him. But our job shouldn't be to be like, hey, you're doing this wrong. You should do what I'm doing. It should be to be like, hey, we're all here to help each other out. I think that does a lot more. I think that holds up to Christian values a lot better than saying, hey, you're doing this wrong. Look at what I'm doing. I got it all right. And then failing because you're a human and being like, well, I still know what's right here. You're doing it wrong, even though I'm doing it wrong too. But I still know I'm better.
Yeah. I like what you're saying. Like seeing, changing our perspective to be like, we are all in this together, seeing ourselves on equal ground instead of seeing Christians as this that have to lead all these people.
Yeah.
Right. Wait, sorry, just to touch on that, I just feel like competition is a natural thing though.
Yeah.
And that's something that we really can't, like, it would be really nice if we could all just be like kumbaya, but like
It's not
I feel like
realistic.
it's not realistic, and like the competition aspect. But maybe what Daniel was talking about earlier, maybe that competition mindset is part of our capitalistic world that we live in. And maybe that's not why it's like that in Europe and other places like that he has seen. I don't know. Maybe Christianity is portrayed different in other countries, and the reason why we see it more as like who can do it better is because of how our society is already built of who can do it better.
You always have to be winning. I always have to be winning.
Exactly.
But
We can all win.
the Adventists are an evangelical denomination.
Honestly,
Right.
I don't know what evangelical means. You guys have said it several times. What does that mean?
Yeah, I feel like we should clarify it at some like point, because I
Like,
feel
what's the
it's been brought up
difference between an evangelical Christian and a regular Christian?
I think the need to spread the gospel.
When you're evangelizing,
Yeah.
evangelism,
Doesn't all Christians believe in spreading the gospel?
I don't think so in like the same way as evangelicals. There's like a different, but I'm pretty sure Adventists they fall under the like branch of evangelical.
I mean, this one says
Evangelist. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Protestant, actually.
this says of evangelical is of or according to the teaching of the gospel or the Christian religion. So it seems like it encompasses all Christians, according to that at least.
I looked it up
Because I also have
earlier.
the definition of an evangelist, a person who seeks to convert others to the Christian faith, especially by public preaching.
Yeah, that's like an evangelist. Like that's like someone who like goes out to like that's like a missionary.
Yeah.
But not
Okay, here's a Wikipedia. It says evangelicalism, also called evangelical Christianity or evangelical Protestantism, is a worldwide interdenominational movement within Protestant Christianity that affirms the centrality of being born again, the authority of the Bible as God's revelation to humanity, and spreading the Christian message. So that is a little bit more specific, I guess.
Oh, so it's Protestants.
Yeah, looks like
Okay,
with-
so
with
not the Catholics.
No, it's Protestant evangelical. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other Christians that are not Protestant
Right.
that isn't Catholic. But
Yeah.
anyway, so the next thing, number 6, God's things that Christians struggle with is God's mysterious ways, which is like, I don't really like how they phrased it there, but yeah, like I guess we struggle with sometimes knowing the fullness of who God is, because we really don't know, but we know the fullness of his character. But when it comes to like the specifics, because some religions, they have like a more physical aspect of who their God is, but for us, when people ask me like, oh, what does your God look like, and what is like more specific things, it's like
yeah. I also think
I
that
can't really answer that.
I think that issue falls into the whole like we're right and you're wrong, and like us thinking that we know everything, because I think a lot of Christians, like, maybe they don't actively think this, but they kind of subconsciously think that they know everything God thinks and everything God wants, and they don't, because nobody can know the fullness of who he is.
Yeah,
Could
this person
Could you repeat the question? Sorry. Like didn't we move on?
God works in mysterious ways.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
This
Yeah,
person
Sorry. I was gonna say that kind of ties into the idea of like, why did this happen? Why did this person die? Or why do bad things happen to good people? God works in mysterious ways. But a lot of people are like, oh well, this is God's will, and stuff. I think that goes into that too.
yeah, that's basically what that person just said.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. They just said, I refuse to blame all the horror in life blindly on the thought that God works in mysterious ways. I
Right.
struggle with the idea that God would let evil things happen and just say it's because he's mysterious. I believe God weeps at all terrible state of the world, and that time will come when he does do something about it.
Yeah. I think I've talked about this before to other people, I believe, but I think it's a situation of, because we have free will, God's not going to actively do something that removes our free will. So if somebody is drinking and driving, God may not actively do something to say, oh, I stopped their car right in the middle of the road to make sure it doesn't cause a car accident. But God knows, God being an omnipotent God, knows the outcome of everything. So no matter what happens, he's going to take what he's given and work with that to make it towards the best end goal, the best outcome. Everything will get used for the best thing. So God doesn't remove the option of free will, and God doesn't make bad things happen, but he doesn't let bad things go without being useful or without having some way to make it redeemable in the end, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
That actually moves into the next topic, which is reconciling personal beliefs and in the Bible. And when I heard that, I was like, dang, that is a huge issue with the church, because there's a lot of people that would disagree with what Delano was saying, or like a lot of things that people disagree with everything that we've been saying in this entire thing, because everyone has their own personal beliefs on how God works, which I feel like is another thing that is different from other religions, because most religions have like an ultimate authority over the entire religion, where if anyone has any discrepancies, they look to that authority, and then that authority makes the decision for them almost. But within Christianity, there's a lot of personal beliefs, a lot of like, even like one church in Adventism alone, one church will believe something completely, like one building church will believe something completely different than, not completely different, but slightly different than the church a mile down the road. And they might have different ideas on how to worship, how to talk to God, how to pray to God. Some things that for a lot of other religions would be key and really important things that would not be changed. But yeah, that's why we have so many denominations, because there's so many different belief systems. Some people don't believe that we even have free will with God, and they're Christian. So
yeah. Which is why I think, to simplify it for people, because I think it's easy to get lost in like the bushes in Christianity. It's easy to get lost in the details and start to freak out. And I've experienced a lot of that this year, well, last year and into this year, to be honest. And so I think sometimes it helps just simplifying it and reminding yourself that, like, while everything else is not unimportant, the most important thing that you can keep bringing it back to is just to seek love in your life, seek to feel it more fully, like accept it from God, from other people, and seek to give it more fully.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
The last three things I'm just going to say really quickly, because they're more like personal things. It's that this list on the internet that I randomly found called the top tens. That's like the website. But the eighth thing was career and other life choices, temptations, and devoting time and praying and being in the word, which is, yeah, this is basic struggles of Christianity, like of like personal time with God. What kind of career should I go into? The temptations of the world, like people always say that, like worldly sins and and then devoting time, actually devoting that time to pray to him, which is something the whole thing in itself. But so the struggles of Christianity.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts? Anything that really stuck out to you?
I got something.
Yeah, go for it.
I would like to say, for all those out there trying to figure out through their situation, I would say look to God. Don't look to an individual. If you trust someone, cool, but realistically, God's the person you need to be basing your life off of your answers and how to react to. Like we even said earlier, like Danila said, and like Barley said, even Darcy, don't get defensive when people try to, counteract to hit you with your beliefs. More just like accept it, take their criticisms and understand and see. Even use that as a time of self-reflection at a point and see, do you inhibit any of these behaviors, and what are you doing to better not only the people around you, but better the perceptions about Christianity? Because at the end of the day, my belief system of how Christianity should be like is that we're here to help others and be as useful to other people as possible, and either helping out with any issues they have in life or just benefit them as a whole. And I think your best way of being able to take people's criticism and understand that is being loving back to them and seeing how you could help them and feel and help them feel more inviting when you're there as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Keep on struggling. No matter how cliche this saying is, diamonds are made under pressure. Typically, if you're struggling through something, usually you're going to learn something from it one way or another. No matter what the conclusion is, you're going to learn something from it, and that'll be valuable to you in the end. So keep wrestling with things, keep asking questions, because that's how you know you're on the right route, instead of just passively sitting there and just doing what you've always done. Mm-hmm. Also, act like a person and treat other people like a person, because we are people. Each of us. Mm-hmm. Nobody's more special, I guess, than the other one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My takeaway would be check yourself, check your mindset. And again, like, you're not going to be perfect. And, you know, a lot of these things that we've said in the podcast that Christians struggle with, I mean, we struggle with, all humans struggle with, we're not perfect, but just try to become intentional about checking where you're acting from. If you're acting out of fear, then try to move away from that and try to move into acting out of love. And that goes for non-Christians and Christians alike. But especially if you're a Christian, like, we believe in an immense source of love. So we should be acting out of love. We should be trying to tap into that source and infuse that into our everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my main takeaway is that nobody's perfect. Don't forget that you're not perfect. Probably should stop, pray, and think before arguing with someone about their beliefs. Is it really worth it? And if you ever been hurt by a Christian, I'm sorry. We're sorry on behalf of Christians. Yeah.
And I think my one thing I just want to like reiterate at the end is it's okay to be afraid to not disappoint God, but what's not okay is taking that fear and putting that on others, or harping on that fear within yourself. And that's something I've struggled with, and I know a lot of other people have struggled with, the fear of like possibly not being good enough in any sense, not even necessarily with God. But I quickly was just trying to find a verse that kind of talked about that. And the first one that came up was something that basically every Christian knows. It's like, it's part of Romans 3:23 to 24. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. I think we forget that every single person basically who's ever been saved by God, even the most holy person in your mind that will definitely make it to heaven, they have fallen short and have sinned in some way. And falling short, that like idea, or not being good enough, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's an opportunity to be better. So I think if we see it as an opportunity to grow, I think that would be better. So the struggles of Christianity is less. A little bit. Hopefully, just to wrap it all up. But thank you for listening. I'm Danila.
I'm Delano.
I'm Darcy.
I'm Briley.
I'm Kirby.
And you've been listening. Yeah, and Dana was here earlier. And you've been listening to Potluck the podcast. We can't wait to see you in our next one. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
We're so cute.
Waved at my microphone.
Oh, nice.